So we have been told plenty of information about atomic structure, mechanical properties, physical properties, electronic properties. We know more about electronic interactions thanks to Yasushi, and now, so I will give some experimental data which are based on the results which I obtained using X-ray emission spectroscopy. So to begin with, and to make a long story short, I would like you to ask you just to remember a few things. First of all, X-ray emission spectroscopy allows to investigate partial and local densities of states, and this around each of the chemical species of a compound. This means that you can separate the different contributions around each of the components of an alloy. And the second thing I would like you keep in mind, it is that transition probabilities are constant over the width of a valence band, and this means that the shape of the electronic distribution makes sense. You can compare the shape from one sample to another one, provided it is the same partial density. And of course, it is possible to compare the experimental data with theoretical calculations of partial densities of states, provided you broaden them to account from the lifetime of the inner hole, which is involved in the X-ray emission process, and provided you account also for the instrumental function of the spectrometer. So all the data which I will show is mainly referring to aluminum 3p states, because, as you see here, they can be obtained alone. So it is very easy to compare aluminum 3p states from one sample to another one. And I will be concerned mainly with aluminum compounds. So the data which I can obtain from pure aluminum is shown here. So what you have to do once you get the partial electronic distributions, you have to adjust them to a same energy in order to compare the distributions of one spectral character and another spectral character together, and have a view of what the valence band is and how the electronic interactions in the valence band are. So the most convenient way to do it is to adjust the distributions in the binding energy scale, and this is achieved provided you do some complementary measurements, mainly using photoemission spectroscopy. So you see the experimental data. The green line is for aluminum 3SD states, which are obtained together, and the red one is for aluminum 3P. And they compare quite well with these calculations, provided you have broadened them with a Gaussian distribution. So the states, the S and P states, completely overlap over this distribution. You see them, the overlap is total, and you have an SP element. So the story started, of course, with Danny, with aluminum 86 manganese 14, which I had the opportunity to investigate and which I compared to aluminum 6 manganese. And here is the data. So here I studied aluminum 3SD, aluminum 3P, and manganese D states in order to have an image, a representation of the valence band. The figure on the top corresponds to this to the quasi-crystalline compound, and the other one corresponds to aluminum 6, the crystalline compound. And you can see that there are some tiny differences. Here, for instance, the hollow is not the same in both compounds. The width of the distribution here, SD, is not the same in the two compounds. The position of the maximum of the 3D contribution is not exactly the same in the two compounds. And the intensity at the Fermi level is not also the same in the two compounds. The differences are not very big. Nevertheless, they exist. So I said, well, okay, this might be something interesting to continue. And thanks to you, I've had a lot of fun during almost 25 years of my life. Because after you came Anpang. Oh, first, I would like to show you that this representation is quite in agreement with the calculation that was made by Professor Fujiwara. This is the total density of states, and you see that the manganese is located at the appropriate energy. You see that this distribution is quite spiky. And here I would like to open a bracket. Professor Hargitay has shown in his books that in nature you can find plenty of beautiful objects that are more or less correlated to the atomic position of atoms in icosahedra or in quasicrystals. But if you look carefully in nature, sometimes you may also have some flavor of how the electronic structure is. This is a mountain which is in Catalonia, close to Barcelona. You see the general shape, which is like this with a peak. The peak is not that big that in the calculation, but well, it is not Himalaya, it's Catalonia. So this is 1,000 meters or so. But you see spikes, you see a pseudo-gap, and you see the decrease, which is parabolic-like. So after Danny came Anpang, and Anpang, he discovered aluminum, copper, iron. So I said, okay, let's have a look at aluminum, copper, iron. And I compare with the omega phase, which is the closest in the phase diagram. And again, you can observe there are some differences. Roughly, the calculation here made by Fujiwara and the results correspond. This peak corresponds to iron, B corresponds to the blue, which is aluminum 3P. This one corresponds to copper, which is in the middle of the band. So a good agreement between the calculation which is made not for the quasicrystal, but for an approximate, of course. And again, if you compare this, the quasicrystal with the crystalline phase, a lot of differences. Here, the shape of the distribution is not the same. The intensity here at the Fermi level is not the same. The position of the iron peak is not the same. Here also you see this, the shape here differs from the other one. So this means that you have electronic interactions which differ from the quasicrystal to the crystalline phase. And to go a little bit further, I have investigated this aluminum 3P contribution because, as I said, you can obtain it alone, and it is easy to compare it from one sample to another one. So the parameters which characterize what is called the aluminum 3P pseudo-gap are the following. In the dash curve represents the aluminum 3P distribution in the pure metal, and the full curve corresponds to one compound. Here it is icosahedral aluminum, copper, iron, but it might be something else. The 2 points which I will pay attention at are the intensity here at the Fermi level and the distance also out of the point which corresponds to half the maximum intensity, because in the pure metal, this is exactly at the position of the Fermi level, and it is exactly at half maximum intensity. I forgot to say that all the curves are normalized because, of course, they are taken in different experimental conditions, but I always forget something. So the important point it is that any deviation with respect to the shape and the characteristics of the aluminum 3P states in the pure metal will correspond to modifications in the electronic structure of the compound, which, of course, will no longer be free electron-like. So one of the first questions which were one of the first way to interpret the formation of the pseudo-gap, as Yasushi said, is to suppose that there is a Hume-Roth-3 interaction. And to check experimentally this point, I measured a series of aluminum-copper Hume-Roth-3 compounds, and also a series of compounds which are structurally complex, going from simple cubic aluminum, copper, iron phases to quasicrystals. Yesterday, Jean-Marie Dubois already showed this picture. I will spend a little bit of time explaining it. This set of data correspond to these aluminum copper compounds, which are real Hume-Roth-3 phases. So you see that the intensity at the Fermi level is lower than in the pure metal. There is a small pseudo-gap, shallow pseudo-gap. This point corresponds to aluminum 7, copper 2, iron. So it is a Hume-Roth-3 compound with a little bit of a transition element. And you see that the intensity at the Fermi level is lower. The same happens with aluminum, copper, iron, and here this corresponds to increasing number of vacancies in the compound. So the structure of the compound is disordered and is more complex in this one than in this one. These blue spots correspond to approximants of the aluminum, copper, iron system. Here, this spot corresponds to aluminum, copper, iron icosahedral quasicrystal. Here it is an aluminum, copper, manganese, aluminum, copper, ruthenium, and this is aluminum, palladium, rhenium, which was the most resistive quasicrystal that was known at the moment I did these measurements. So obviously there is something else than the Humbert 3 mechanism which governs the formation of the pseudo gap at the Fermi level in these compounds. And this is what theorists call the SPD hybridization. So my question is, how do electronic states interact to produce this kind of SPD hybridization? I will show data for this Humbert 3 alloys with no transition elements, copper aluminum compounds. Just two examples. So there are three partial densities of states which describe the valence band. Here the green one and here also the green one correspond to aluminum 3 SD states. The purple one, which is red here, corresponds to copper 3D for S states, but mainly 3D states because of transition probability. And the blue corresponds to aluminum 3P. And which is really dominant in this figure, it is the fact that copper states are set in the middle of the valence band. They interact with the aluminum states and separate them into two parts. If you remember the picture I show, the band for aluminum was something more or less parabolic-like with a narrow peak close to the Fermi level. So this parabolic-like shape is transformed into these two peaks, the 3P also two peaks, and the copper 3D states, which in the pure metal are at about 2.5 eV from the Fermi level, they are pushed to the center of the valence band, and they are set at about 4 eV from the Fermi level. So a very strong interaction between copper and aluminum, and the states here are fully SP aluminum states. They overlap, so in the same we are in the space of energy, so there is some covalency in this part of the valence band here. And here the interaction between the aluminum and copper is a repulsive interaction which separates the states. So the same is true for this gamma phase, with some details which change from one sample to the other one, but well, globally, roughly, it is the same kind of interaction. Localized states which split the band, the extended band, into two parts, which are located from each side of this localized band. So now, if I introduce one transition element, what happens? Let's have a look at the omega phase again. So the green line corresponds to aluminum 3P SD states, the blue one to aluminum 3P. Here, I don't know why it is blue, because it is red. In fact, it's copper 3D4S, and the purple one corresponds to iron states. Again, I put 3D4S because this is what you see really, but because of transition probabilities, essentially it is 3D and 3D. Okay, so what we see it is that here we have again copper which is set at the middle of the valence band. But the maximum here is not in coincidence with the minimum, which is shown by the arrow. And this means that the states which interact here, the aluminum SD states which interact with copper, are not fully extended states. In the case they are fully extended, the maximum of the peak, of the D peak, and the minimum of the extended band coincide. If there is not such a coincidence, it means that the states are not fully extended. The same is true in this part of the valence band. There is a small interaction between iron, and the SD states. And the minimum here is just a small shoulder. So this means that the states which are here have a rather localized character. And the 3p states are in overlap with the aluminum 3 SD states. So close to the top of the valence band, you have some localization, SPD hybridization. Again, the position of the copper is close to 4 eV, so this means that copper is pushed in the center of the valence band. But iron, which is normally about 2 eV from the Fermi level, it is pushed the opposite way. It is pushed close to the Fermi level. So in this area, we have some localized states. This is another example. This is a so-called complex intermetallic. This means that the size of the unit cell is larger than in the previous case, many more atoms than in the previous case. And you see that we have something which is completely different. This green curve corresponds to cobalt 3D states, the blue aluminum 3p, the red aluminum SD. Here, contrarily to the previous case, it is the p states which is in interaction with the s states close to the top of the valence band. And the cobalt states are alone pushed towards the Fermi level. They are at about 2 eV in the metal, and they are at about 1.6 eV in the compound. So a very strong interaction which repels the d states close to the Fermi level, and the rest of the valence band is more or less with valence area here, and you have almost s states at the bottom of the valence band. Another example, aluminum 11 manganese 4. It is rather similar with a stronger covalency in this area, in this energy range of the valence band, and manganese is pushed again towards to the Fermi level. And here the interaction is stronger because of this minimum here, which shows that covalency is stronger than in the previous example. So the manganese, the d states are pushed a little bit more. This is rather localized character because there is a kind of repulsion between the D pure and the SPD states of aluminum. And another example, well, aluminum 13 iron 4, it is rather similar to the previous one. And again, we have these states which are close to the Fermi level, and they are in overlapping just the edge of the valence band. So this interaction between the edges, the part of the valence band which is close to the edges in aluminum, and the part of the valence band which corresponds to the transition metal, makes that the aluminum states are pushed to the center of the valence band, and they are responsible for this intensity here, which is rather low in all these compounds. And this is one of the characteristics of the pseudo gap. Another example, aluminum 3 nickel, which is completely different from the previous one, although the formula is almost the same. Here, there is a very, very important interaction between nickel and aluminum S states. You see that there is a part which is completely repelled towards the edge, and also there is interaction between nickel states and aluminum 3p states. You see them from this small hollow. So because this is a rather important minimum, this part of the valence band is very extended like. This part not that much because it is narrow, and here the states with P character are rather localized since the minimum is very shallow. So it's from one compound to another one. It is really anytime something completely new. You have to pay very much attention to all the details of the shapes of the curves. And to finish this series of alloys with one transition element, here is aluminum 8 vanadium 5. Again, something a little bit different. This is similar to aluminum, to the previous case, aluminum nickel, but here we have a contribution of vanadium states which interact only with the aluminum SD. So it is like if these states of vanadium were married, one part with aluminum 3P, one part with aluminum 3S. There is a disconnection. They behave, they interact in a different way according to the energy they are from the Fermi level. And again, we have this small, this minimum here, this low intensity. And again, we have the position of the vanadium, which is different from the position in the metal. Here, the interaction is really opposite to the previous cases where the transition element was pushed to the Fermi level. Here, it is pushed towards the center of the valence band. So again, from one sample to another one, it is completely different, and probably the atomic arrangement has something to do. I'm sure, it is sure. Well, I will skip this. This is another example which, well, I will skip it also. So let me go now to aluminum-based complex intermetallics containing two transition elements. First example I show is an aluminum chromium iron compound. Here the blue distribution corresponds to iron D states, the green one to chromium D states, and which comes from this. The red curve corresponds to aluminum 3P states. So there is an overlap between the chromium and P states. So covalency between P and aluminum P and chromium states. And here there is overlap between iron and this part of the valence band of the aluminum 3S states. So covalency again between iron and one part of the S states of the valence band, close to the Fermi level. And again, there is a shift of the iron D states towards the Fermi level. They are located at 1,6 eV instead of 2 in the metal. And on the contrary, the chromium is pushed towards the center of the valence band. Another example is aluminum 70, cobalt 15, and nickel 15. And in that case, we have something which is a little bit different. This green, the curve with the green diamonds corresponds to cobalt. The one with the dots, the purple dots, corresponds to nickel. The blue triangles are for aluminum 3P, and the black dots aluminum 3SD. So here there is something which is quite new with respect to what we have seen before. The P states, the nickel D states, and the cobalt D states, they do not overlap. They are slightly separated. The two, one would have expected that the two D bands could have merged into a single one, but it is not what happens. On the contrary, this, the iron states push the cobalt states towards the Fermi level, and the aluminum 3P states, they do not overlap exactly with these states. So this means they have a character which is separated from the others. And the small shoulder which is here shows that the P states interact with the aluminum SD, and because it is not very pronounced, this means that all these states are rather localized in this compound. What I suspect it is that actually there are not only the S states which are playing a role close to the Fermi level in the aluminum, in the case of aluminum, but more likely states with a D character which exist in compounds. And this is a calculation that was made by Professor Fujiwara for aluminum, copper, iron approximant to mimic the quasi-crystal. And this corresponds to the partial densities of states with S character of aluminum, and this to the partial density of states of aluminum with D character. And you see that here the contribution of these states close to the Fermi level is almost as important as the one of the S states, the intensity. So probably this is something that theorists maybe will investigate sometime. I don't know. My feeling it is that these states should play a role, but it is just a feeling. I cannot discriminate between these states from one kind and the other. Okay, So what happens when you have a compound, an aluminum-based compound with no transition element? So I could have shown, if I had been aware that you were going to show aluminum-lithium Ishi, I could have shown the spectra which I had obtained a few years ago, but well, never mind, I will send you the data. So I recall which is the situation with aluminum here, with the calculations. Essentially SP with a very, very small contribution of states with the D character close to the Fermi level. And seen in this part of the band, this narrow peak corresponds to a many-body effect which exists in because of the spectroscopy technique which exists close to the Fermi level. So the example which I will show is the Samson phase, aluminum 3 magnesium 2. So I show you the data for magnesium. It is quite similar to that for aluminum, as expected, because both are free electron metals. So at first sight, what you can expect it is that the bands for magnesium and the bands for aluminum will merge together, and you will have one big S band and one big P band. But it is not at all what happens. You have something which my grandson would say it is quite tricky. We have four curves. The green one here is aluminum 3SD. The purple one is magnesium 3SD. The blue is aluminum 3P. And this dark purple here, well, it was not that, it was more different on the computer, I'm sorry. The two colors are almost the same, I'm sorry. But well, it is this one here, which corresponds to magnesium 3P. So what we see, it is that at 2 eV, about 2 eV from the Fermi level, both SD distributions present a hollow, a minimum, or a plateau, which is in coincidence with a maximum of the aluminum 3P distribution. So this means that aluminum P states interact with the aluminum S states in the same way that copper interacted with aluminum states, separating them into two parts. One part here, one part here. So this means that here, aluminum, it is rather extended-like in character in this area, but magnesium not that much, because it is flat. There is not a real hollow. Here, magnesium P states are, the maximum is in coincidence with a small shoulder, a small minimum in the aluminum 3P states. So this means that this interacts like copper did in aluminum-copper alloys, separating the P states into two parts. So this means that these states have a localized character stronger than the one of the P aluminum states. So now these two peaks, they cannot be really S peaks. Also because in all the cases which I have shown with aluminum-based alloys, there is always states with a localized character which are close to the Fermi level and which are necessary to stabilize the structure. So what we, and the second point, it is that the two maxima do not overlap. They are apart from each other, like if there were cobalt and nickel which repel each other. So for all these reasons, what we propose it is that there is in this particular compound a kind of self-hybridization which localizes the aluminum and magnesium states, the character of the aluminum and magnesium state close to the Fermi level and contributes to the stabilization of the compound. This is our hypothesis. Unfortunately, calculations are not available. I do not know if someday there will be. But in any case, well, it is something which, this is my interpretation. Then I could compare also this Samson phase, well crystalline and pure Samson phase, with a disordered compound of about the same composition. And the disorder induced some modifications. You see that here the distributions differ from that one. Again, magnesium states look more localized than the aluminum states. And well, I could, we can discuss all these shapes, whether the aluminum states are more or less, or the magnesium are more or less localized than in the crystalline compound. In any case, this shows that the electronic structure in these compounds is sensitive not only to the close neighbors, which is always supposed, but also to long-distance neighbors. All the atoms, whatever the number is, contribute to the density of states, to the fact that this SPD hybridization exists. And finally, the electronic interactions result from an interplay between covalency and repulsion, which differs from one sample to another one. There is no general rule. You cannot expect when you say, well, let's study this X and Y compound, the electronic structure will be such. You have to look inside what it is. And I said that both close and short and long distances are important in the formation of a valence band. So I would like to thank again Danny, because I really enjoyed myself for more than 25 years doing all this. I was kept very busy. Sometimes I said, well, okay, I would like to go to cinema or go to work, but well, I promised to do these measurements, so I have to do them. So it was a lot of fun, thanks to you first, and thanks to Anpang also. I've been very fortunate because I could work with many people in many countries and made a lot of friends. So thank you again. Thank you for your patience.